This is Right to Life Radio. And now, here's your host, John Gerardi. This is Right to Life Radio, a production of Right to Life of Central California. And now, here's your host, John Gerardi.
Well, thank you all for joining us. It's a merry almost Christmas. Well, I guess we're still like a week and I guess we're still like 9 days away from Christmas. Anyway, merry almost Christmas to all of you from Right to Life of Central California. John Gerardi here. I've been abandoned. I've been abandoned by my boy, Jonathan Keller. He's abandoned me to do this radio show all by my lonesome here from the palatial Right to Life of Central California studios. So a pox upon you, Jonathan, for having so many things. No. We love Jonathan. Jonathan's a man about town. He's very busy. So we'll be doing this show solo today and talking about some big stories in the news relating to the abortion issue that I want to break down. There's obviously this very big, widely talked about case out of Texas, a woman who's pregnant with trisomy, with a child who has a disability. We're going to get to that in the latter half of the show. And what I want to focus on at the start, though, is the fact that the Supreme Court has agreed to hear a case regarding the abortion pill. And I want to talk about what this case is, the parameters of it, what they're looking at it, why we should care about it, what exactly the justices are going to be looking at. So this is a case that's coming out of Texas. This is the funny thing that happens with lawfare in 21st century America is basically when a Republican administration does something that Democrats don't like, Democrats file legal challenges to it in either the District of Hawaii or the Northern District of California, because those are the most liberal federal judicial districts in the country, and the judges are all a bunch of Democrat appointees. When Republicans disagree with a policy that a Democratic president has put into place or a Democrat administration has put into place, they filed suit in the Northern District of Texas because there's only one federal judge there and he's super duper conservative. So this lawsuit was filed in the Federal District of Texas, and it's challenging the FDA and their original approval and subsequent regulatory changes to the abortion pill. It's challenging, basically, should the abortion pill be legal? Should the abortion pill be legally available on the American market? Was its approval by the FDA legal to begin with? And were all of the subsequent FDA decisions, particularly those done in 2016 and 2021, to step down the regulatory requirements and safety protocols surrounding the abortion pill, should those various regulatory changes be allowed to be on the books? Should the abortion pill be legal? And that's the discussion. Basically, the federal judge in Texas who first heard this case, he thought that the original FDA approval of the abortion pill was wrongly done, incorrectly done, illegitimately done, that the FDA used an incorrect process for approving it when they originally approved the abortion pill in the year 2000. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, who heard the appeal, they said, well, no, we think the statute of limitations has passed, so we can't get rid of the FDA's original approval of the abortion pill. But all of the subsequent approvals are illegitimate. All of the subsequent regulatory changes, for example, the ones in 2016 that Barack Obama made and the ones in 2021 that President Biden made to make the abortion pill more widely accessible, those we are striking down. And now this question is going to the Supreme Court. So let's dig into this and let's understand the parameters of this and what the Supreme Court could do. Now, the threshold thing, and this is kind of a definitional thing, but a lot of it is sort of junked up by how people refer to these things slang-wise. The abortion pill is something different from the morning after pill. So the morning after pill is a contraceptive. It usually functions as a contraceptive. Its purpose, the purpose of the active drug, is to prevent a woman from ovulating. That's the point of the morning after pill. It's taken the morning after a sexual encounter from which you do not want to result in a baby. And the point of it is to try to prevent ovulation and thereby prevent a new human being from forming. Now, we're not saying the morning after pill is good. Far from it. It's very bad. It's got a lot of bad aspects to it. And like most hormonal contraceptives, it can have a secondary backup mechanism to it that can actually be abortifacient. Basically, it can alter the lining of the uterine wall to make the uterine wall hostile to implantation by a newly fertilized embryo. But for the most part, the morning after pill is contraceptive. The abortion pill is something different. I think the name for the morning after pill is levonorgestrel. That's the actual medical. I might have butchered the name there, but I'm trying to remember it as best I can. But that's the name. The actual name for the drug that is the abortion pill is called mifepristone, and mifepristone can be used up to 10 weeks into a pregnancy, not the morning after. This is used up to 10 weeks into a pregnancy, basically to artificially bring about a miscarriage, to bring about the demise of an unborn child, an embryo or a fetus who is already formed, who's already implanted on the uterine wall. So the abortion pill is something very different. It's a very drastic. Any woman who has gone through a miscarriage knows that a miscarriage can be a very difficult, very drastic event, a very difficult and painful and healthcare risky thing. So that's what the abortion pill is. Basically, the abortion pill inhibits the hormone progesterone. Progesterone is very important for pregnancy health. And by inhibiting the hormone progesterone, the embryo or fetus detaches from the uterine wall, is cut off from food supply, and the baby dies. In the abortion pill process, a second drug is taken called misoprostol, which the woman takes in order to expel the embryo or the fetus. So the abortion pill is something different from the morning after pill. I think that's an important point and distinction to make. The abortion pill was first approved in the year 2000 under the Clinton administration's FDA. And the FDA has a process for an expedited approval for certain kinds of drugs that are designed to treat serious illnesses. All right. So they have their normal approval process. They have a shortened, expedited process for treating serious illnesses. Now, for basically the entire duration of the Clinton administration, the Clinton administration worked to try to bring the abortion pill over from Europe to the United States and have it get FDA approval. And so for 8 years, the Clinton administration worked hand in hand with the Ford Foundation and others to do the necessary testing, do everything possible to. The abortion pill was created in France, and basically the idea was, well, let's do what needs to happen to get FDA approval for this in America, because the abortion industry realized if you can do abortions without a doctor, that's a huge advantage as far as people being able to get abortions. It's always been a struggle for the abortion industry, is to get doctors actually willing to do abortions, which is why, like in California, for example, they've said, oh, we'll let nurse practitioners do abortions. Now, we're going to let physician's assistants do abortions. A lot of stuff happens in California basically to get around the fact that there are very few providers who want to do abortions. So the Clinton administration worked for 8 solid years to get the abortion pill over from Europe. And finally, in September of 2000, seeing that the election was 2 months away, that Al Gore and George W. Bush were running neck and neck, and realizing that the George W. Bush administration probably wouldn't, give approval for the abortion pill, the Clinton administration had the FDA do an expedited approval process, a quicker approval process and gave the abortion pill its FDA approval in the year September, in the year 2000, in September of 2000, just 2 months before the election. And they were smart to have done it. Al Gore lost. George W. Bush won. Probably George W. Bush wouldn't have approved it. But here's the thing. The expedited approval process, and this is kind of at the heart of this lawsuit that the Supreme Court is hearing, the FDA's expedited approval process for drugs is designed for drugs that are meant to treat serious illnesses. And this is a problem. The abortion pill is not treating any serious illness. Pregnancy is not an illness. It is a natural bodily condition, okay? The COVID vaccines got approved under the same similar FDA expedited process. At the very least, they could say for themselves, well, COVID is actually a real, actual illness. It's actually a serious illness. You can't say that about pregnancy. It's not a serious illness. So a number of groups have challenged, was that FDA approval legit? Does the FDA actually have the standing to give an approval for this drug that does not treat any serious illness? Were they able to give an expedited approval? Now, this then goes towards certain other kinds of questions. Okay, we look at the regulatory history of the abortion pill. So it's approved in 2000. 2001, George W. Bush comes into office. What does he do for the approval of the abortion pill, the regulations surrounding the abortion pill? Nothing. For 8 years, George W. Bush and his FDA, his Department of Health and Human Services, did jack squat to alter the legal regulatory approval status for the abortion pill. A huge missed opportunity. Well, Barack Obama comes into office. And Barack Obama in 2016, yet again in an election year, okay, again knowing that, well, we think Hillary Clinton's going to win, but it's possible she won't, and indeed she did not. In 2016, the Obama administration, after the FDA had for years stymied people from bringing any lawsuits to challenge the original approval process for the abortion pill, in 2016, the FDA issues new regulations around the abortion pill. So prior to 2016, basically you could only use the abortion pill under FDA guidelines for the first 7 weeks of pregnancy. In 2016, that was expanded out to 10 weeks into pregnancy. Before you needed 3 doctor's visits. Now you only need 1 doctor visit. And critically, the Obama administration eliminated the collection of any adverse health and safety data from women who had taken the abortion pill, other than deaths. So this record had been developed over the first 16 years of the abortion pill being legal. This whole record had been developed of thousands of women hemorrhaging, thousands of women being hospitalized, and some 24 women dying from the abortion pill. And on the basis of that record, the FDA said, well, it's pretty safe. Which, again, doesn't strike me as particularly safe. Seems pretty safe. Let's loosen the safety restrictions around it. Why would a good safety record with these protections around it justify fewer protections? It never made any sense. And the refusal to collect any further data also never made any sense. Now, let's fast forward to 2020, the 2020 election. Every pro-abortion legal public policy talking head is agitating in the pages of the New England Journal of Medicine, in other places. They are agitating for the abortion pill to be made available to people without an in-person doctor visit. They want the abortion pill to be available after just a telemedicine visit and for abortion pills to be sent to people in the mail. When we return, we're going to discuss why that is. And let me tell you something, it has nothing to do with health. It has nothing to do with safety. It had everything to do with this very critical buzzword for the pro-abortion movement, access to abortion. That is next on Right to Life Radio. Back with Right to Life Radio. All right, we want to talk about the Supreme Court. They're hearing this big case regarding the abortion pill. We're going to break it all down for you, what exactly this case is about. This case is about whether or not the abortion pill is going to be legal and legally permitted at the level that it is right now. And to understand the Supreme Court case, you have to understand just how extreme and radically the Biden administration, FDA, has allowed the abortion pill to be distributed, prescribed. So let me explain what's happened. Up through 2020, the abortion pill was only available to you if you had an in-person appointment with a doctor. You could only get the abortion pill at a clinic. Now, the pro-abortion side hated this. They basically took the posture of, well, what if you live far away from an abortion clinic? Then you can't have an abortion. What if it's hard for you to drive? This is terrible. We need to allow women to get the abortion pill without going to a clinic, without the need for an inpatient visit. We need people to get the abortion pill through a telemedicine visit, to get it prescribed to them just after a telemedicine visit. And we need a way for the abortion pill to be mailed to people. That is what they want. Why? For those of you who, obviously this is my job, it's not your job, but for those of us who listen to the rhetoric that the pro-abortion side uses, they constantly talk about wanting abortion to be safe. They don't anymore, rather. They used to, back in the old days, they used to talk about wanting abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. And probably a lot of you have heard that phrase. Abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. And that was sort of the buzzword about abortion in the 90s. Safe, legal, and rare. It's not necessarily a good thing, but it should be legal, and if it's legal, it should be safe. Well, none of the pro-abortion movement, they don't want it to be rare. No one is saying rare anymore. What they're saying is safe, legal, and universally accessible. Accessibility is the touchstone. That is the guiding principle for all legal, public policy, medical advocacy for abortion. Is abortion accessible? That's what they care about. And that's what drove the Biden administration to allow, on a temporary basis during the COVID pandemic, the abortion pill to be prescribed to people just after a telemedicine visit, and then for the abortion pill to be sent to people through the mail. Why? If you can get an abortion through a telemedicine visit, and you can just get your abortion pill shipped to you through the mail, you have achieved universal access. It doesn't matter if you live in a state that only has 1 or 2 abortion clinics. This is your abortion clinic right here. For those of you watching on the YouTube, I'm just holding up my phone and trying not to give away my home screen here. But this is your smartphone. Hold up your smartphone. Look at it. That's the abortion clinic of today. In California. If you're pregnant, you can pull out your smartphone, you can get the Planned Parenthood Direct app, you can download it on your phone, and within seconds you can be video chatting with a Planned Parenthood nurse practitioner. You can get a prescription for chemical abortion, and then you can have the abortion pill mailed to your house or sent to a nearby major pharmacy. And it was the Biden administration that changed that. We knew during the 2020 election that was an issue up for debate. If Donald Trump won, he wasn't going to change those rules. He was going to say, no, you still have to go to a clinic to get the abortion pill. You still need an in-person appointment. If Joe Biden won, he was going to allow telemedicine abortion visits and the abortion pill shipped through the mail, and that's precisely what happened. And health be damned, all right? If you're doing a telemedicine appointment to get the abortion pill, what are you not getting? Well, you're not getting an ultrasound. That's for darn sure. And guess what happens? If you don't have an ultrasound, you could miss the fact that you have an ectopic pregnancy. You could wrongly date your pregnancy and be aborting a child much older than 10 weeks, which hugely increases the complication rates for everything. If you have an ectopic pregnancy and don't know about it, the abortion pill is not going to work, and you can die from an ectopic pregnancy. Ectopic pregnancy is when the baby's growing somewhere other than the uterus. Maybe the baby's growing in the fallopian tube. If that's happening, mom's going to die and baby's going to die. And in fact, there was a big piece in the New England Journal of Medicine about this very thing. A woman who was trying to do an abortion all at home without going to a clinic, without getting an ultrasound, was having an ectopic pregnancy, almost died because she was trying to do the abortion pill process. Also, if you don't have an ultrasound after your chemical abortion, after your pill abortion, you could miss the fact that you're having an incomplete abortion. So basically, not everything has been expelled from your uterus. That leads to huge risk of infection, of all kinds of serious health problems. So what the Biden administration, FDA, and pro-abortion forces have emphasized, they have emphasized access over safety. They just want abortion to be legal. They don't want it to be rare, and less and less, seemingly, they don't even care that it's safe because the abortion pill makes them money, all right? You look at the Medi-Cal reimbursement rates for an abortion pill abortion, Planned Parenthood makes a nice little chunk of change for each one. And it's a whole lot more money, a lot quicker than actually providing prenatal care for somebody who is pregnant, who's on Medi-Cal, for example. So the Supreme Court is going to decide which of these regulations by the FDA are going to stand. Are we going to go back to the original year 2000 approval levels where abortion pills only available through the first 7 weeks of pregnancy, only after 3 doctor visits? That would be massively restricting to access to the abortion pill. Are we going to just let the Biden rules stand? Let the abortion pill be shipped through the mail? Or are we going to say, no, the original FDA approval for the abortion pill was wrong? The expedited FDA process for approving the expedited process for the FDA to approve a drug, it requires that it be for a drug that's treating a serious illness, and the abortion pill does not treat a serious illness. You know, that's the core of the argument. You know, sometimes you'll hear people say on the right that abortion is not healthcare, and then you'll hear people on the left say abortion is healthcare. That's more than just the two sides trying to say that abortion is bad or abortion is good. Those of us who say abortion is not healthcare, we mean something by it. What we mean is healthcare means fixing something that's wrong with the body, healing a disease, correcting some kind of bad condition. Okay, if you got a broken, you break your kneecap, you crack your kneecap, it is healthcare to treat it, to heal it. Getting your kneecap from a state of being broken to not being broken. Getting your femur from a state of being broken to not being broken. Having you from a state of, dying from cancer to not dying of cancer. That's healthcare. Pregnancy is not a disease. Making you not pregnant does not make you healthy. Being pregnant is that is a natural state. Abortion is not healthcare in that regard. And I think that isn't just like a sort of moral message. That should be a very tangible public policy reality. It shouldn't be getting expedited approvals from the FDA because it's not treating a serious illness. It's not treating an illness at all. It's a voluntary elective act. It's not treating an illness. It's not correcting something wrong with the human body. When we return, we'll be talking about the abortion case out of Texas, talking about prenatal diagnoses, all of that and more. That is next on Right to Life Radio. To a case that's garnered a lot of national attention, and it's incredibly frustrating to me the way stuff becomes news. For some reason, one woman facing a very difficult pregnancy situation where the media feels they can portray laws banning abortion as unreasonable, that gets blown up into a national story. But meanwhile, the woman who dies from the abortion pill, buried, not a story. In spite of the fact that it's a major legal controversy that's going on right now about the legal status of the abortion pill, whether its FDA approval was correct. Stories about people going through the abortion pill process and almost dying because they tried to self-manage their abortions at home. Nope, that doesn't become national news because the gatekeepers of the media who have a very set pro-abortion viewpoint, they just don't let it become a major story. So I want to talk about this story out of Texas regarding Kate Cox. This woman is a mother of 2 children. She's in her 21st week of pregnancy, and doctors have diagnosed her baby with trisomy 18. Trisomy 18 is often a fatal diagnosis. Basically, a child born with trisomy 18 does not have a long life expectancy, although that is not the case universally. There are a number of instances of people living years and years and years and years and years with trisomy 18. Rick Santorum, who is a former United States senator from Pennsylvania and was a candidate for the presidency at least one time, I think, at least in 2012. Rick Santorum is a very dedicated pro-lifer, has a child with trisomy 18 who lived for years and years and years and years and years. And it's a very difficult diagnosis. It's something very difficult, but that is a person who has life and has value. So Texas's abortion laws basically don't permit abortions for the sake of fetal, basically for the sake of some maldiagnosis for the baby. So the fact that a child might be born with a disability is not a sufficient reason under Texas law to permit a legal abortion. And so Kate Cox, this woman who was pregnant with this child, was trying to challenge this in order to have an abortion. She was also making this claim that if she had an abortion, it could prevent her down the road potentially from being able to have children. And this has become a huge national story, and it's this thing that's being thrown into pro-lifers' faces about how unreasonable Texas's law is, how this is a diagnosis that's not compatible with life, although that is a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. One of the reasons why trisomy 18 is often a diagnosis that is, quote, not compatible with life is because basically it's sort of this self-perpetuating reality. If you just decide it's not compatible with life and you're constantly recommending women to have abortions from it, there's not going to be a lot of medical resources and effort put into trying to preserve the lives of children who have this condition, okay? Once they're, a lot of children with Down syndrome back, decades ago, often children with Down syndrome were said to have, very short life expectancies, limited life expectancies. But now, people with Down syndrome are living longer and longer lives as there's a greater movement in support of people with Down syndrome. Trisomy 18 is a similar thing. We also know that misdiagnosis rates for trisomy 18 are actually quite high. And in fact, there was a massive story, I believe, out of the New York Times detailing how a lot of genetic testing for certain kinds of conditions like this are often wrong, are often misdiagnoses. And it's a tragic thing because a lot of people choose abortion on the basis of these kinds of genetic testing. Often pro-lifers meeting with genetic counselors, there's often this absolute befuddlement where, pro-lifers, well, I don't really want genetic testing. It's not going to impact, whether or not this child has something. It's not like we're going to choose abortion anyway. And genetic counselors often get bewildered by such a thing. I know a story of one of our supporters who has a daughter who had a congenital condition. First word out of the genetic counselor's mouth was, well, we can schedule an abortion, blah, 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 blah. And I think genetic counselors it's a real overstepping of their role to start recommending abortion for people. So let's talk about this as a public policy question. One of the things to understand is there's this idea, well, we're trying to prevent this child from having to live a life of exceeding cruelty. And what gets glossed over is, okay, you want to be merciful to this child, not have this child experience a life of pain and suffering. Well, that's a very odd way of doing it through a second trimester D&E abortion. So this child is 21 weeks along. This child has the ability to feel pain. And a child that far along into a pregnancy, there's no easy way of doing an abortion. There is no quick and simple way. The reality of abortion in the second trimester and onward especially second trimester abortions specifically, is that it is a violent procedure. There's no other way of, any of you who listen to Right to Life Radio or follow what we do at Right to Life know we don't try to engage a lot in shock value. But I do fear sometimes that there's this over-sanitized notion of how abortion works out there in the world that, oh, well, she'll just get this 21-week abortion. Well, what happens in a 21-week abortion? What happens in a second trimester abortion? So for anyone listening, if you've got little kids in the car or sensitive ears, and you might not want to hear this, I'm not going to say anything FCC violative here, but you might want to, this is violent. So what happens in a second trimester abortion is as follows. The child is too big to just kind of extract, okay, or to just vacuum out, as happens in a first trimester abortion. So what happens is that the child is, with a Soder clamp, I believe that's the name of it, the child's limbs are grasped by a clamp, and the limbs are removed limb by limb from the torso. The skull of the child is crushed in order for the child to be extracted. That's what happens. You may not like it, you may not like hearing it, but that's the reality. So let me ask, if we're trying to prevent a child from experiencing pain and suffering, this is the method? Doesn't seem like a very pain and suffering-free way of doing things, okay? And that's the fundamental reality of abortion that no one wants to grapple with, is that this is violent. We are actively inflicting violence on this person. It is an active work, an active intervention to kill another living organism. It isn't like, someone's hooked up to a dialysis machine and a ventilator and they're, 89 years old and they've got terminal cancer and life support is the ventilator's withdrawn or something like that. That is something different. That is passively actively, you are doing something. Passive, you are allowing something to happen. That is passively allowing nature to take its course. There's always been a relevant distinction throughout the whole history of medical ethics for the last 2,000 plus years between the passive withdrawal of treatment, withdrawal of extraordinary forms of treatment, and actively doing something to end someone's life. And I think this has to be part of the discussion of abortion. None of us deny that the situation this woman is in is a very difficult one. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. This is a very difficult, extremely challenging thing for a family to have to experience, for any individual woman to have to experience. But what we're talking about is resolving it through an act of horrific, almost unspeakable. You heard, all of you who listened to this just heard how hesitant I am to say this on the radio. Okay? Like I have to walk on eggshells. I have to give people trigger warnings. I have to give you time to make sure your kids aren't here. Second trimester abortions are acts of unspeakable, horrific violence. They just are. That's how they're performed. You can't do them some other more sanitized way. That's just what it is. And even if it were more sanitized, you're still killing a living human organism. And I think that's the thing that's at the core of all this. We keep having these discussions about, how could you insist that a woman facing such extreme poverty continue to have this pregnancy? I agree. Her extreme poverty is terrible, or her lack of support from a partner is terrible. And my whole life's work at Right to Life has been focused on ways to try to address those things. But the solution to it can't be actively murdering someone. It can't be vacuuming someone out of a womb. It can't be ripping someone's limbs off their torso and crushing their skull. That can't be the answer. That's the line I draw. And if you're not willing to say and I think that's the problem, is most pro-choice folks, or folks who label themselves pro-choice, they don't want to say or think or grapple with the reality of what they're talking about. Because if they did, they'd have to sort of rethink their whole thing. Children are often difficult and inconvenient. They have been for the whole history of the world. And that was the distinction between, frankly, pagan and Christian civilization. Well, it was one of the major defining differences was, do we view human life as inherently valuable, whether it's convenient or not, or don't we? Do we take inconvenient children and leave them by the side of the road or in the forest for, a wolf to eat them, or for them to die exposed to the elements? Or do we take care of this child even if this child is inconvenient? And do we have a societal commitment? It's not all on Kate Cox. It should be on all of society to help her to take care of this child. So I guess that's my assessment of it. When we return, I just want to get back to let's make the main thing the main thing. What are most of these abortions for? They're not all these extreme cases. That's next on Right to Life Radio. As we look through the whole Kate Cox story, this woman in Texas who has a child diagnosed with trisomy 18, who is apparently going out of Texas to get an abortion. Texas would not allow her to get an abortion. One of the things I want to emphasize here is the media does an unbelievable job of framing the abortion debate along the lines of the most difficult 1% of exceptions, not along the lines of the 99% majority of all abortions. A tiny percentage of abortions are done because of complicated, difficult situations like the Kate Cox situation, or for a situation such as sexual assault. And I just want us to remember that when you're talking with people, if the only reasons they're pro-choice is for a Kate Cox scenario or for abortion in the case of rape, I think it's important to try to establish with folks, so you're not okay, though, with abortions just because of economic hardship or just as a form of birth control, more or less. If you're not okay with abortion in those cases, then you're not okay with 99% of abortion, 98% of abortions, the overwhelming majority of abortions. And that's the problem, is that the media has managed to make sort of the standard, for lack of a better cipher, the standard Democratic Party position on abortion, for example, which is that abortion should be completely unregulated, legal for all 9 months of pregnancy, government funded. That's 99% off where a lot of people are. A lot of people are only okay for abortion because of rape or incest or a situation like this Kate Cox thing or life of the mother, which constitute a tiny fraction of abortions. And I think that's an important thing for us to remember is the legal standard we've been living under in the United States, the Roe v. Wade standard, is farther. Basically, our position on abortion is, I think, still closer to how most people really think about abortion than the Roe v. Wade standard. The problem is that the Roe v. Wade standard has great advertising. It has great media marketing. That'll do it for Right to Life Radio. We will see you next time on Power Talk.